Hey, welcome back. I am pretty excited to be talking about this little knife here today. It is the Winterblade Company Mirage, and sorry, I totally botched that there. Total user error as per usual on this channel. This thing is quite a cool little knife, and there's some things that I like about it more now after spending some time with it than I did initially. So let me jump right into those. And I'll just say in general, this is now a knife that I would really recommend. You see like a couple of the mistakes I'm making. It's mostly because of the angle I'm sitting. If I were to stand up, this knife actually works really well in a position that you're typically going to be using it, which is, more cutting down into something. When I'm doing my knife videos, I tend to be holding the knives at sort of an unnatural angle, honestly. But as I started to carry this and use it in the real world, I was kind of blown away by how good some things were. First and foremost, the pocket clip. This really surprised me, actually, but this pocket clip is really good. He kind of thinned out this area by putting the hole in the middle of it, and it ends up just working really well. It's got that sweet mix of, goes over the pant leg, but also it holds it in place. It doesn't, slip off. And it actually looks really cool too. So if you think about what that looks like coming out of the pants, it's a pretty unique look to it. In fact, let me find something right here that would kind of show you what that might look like. So if you think about what the look is of this, maybe we'll just do it here on the green to even further, woo, almost lost it there, enunciate it. You have just kind of a futuristic looking thing there coming out of the pocket. A little bit of that Cybertruck kind of feel to it, right? The second one is, on the first video when I reviewed it, I said I wouldn't trade off the benefits of the magnet deployment for the drawbacks of the magnet closure, but you get used to it really quickly. And again, when I'm at this angle, that's kind of the case where it's a little harder to get to close, but normally I'm closing my knife at a downward angle like this, and it actually works really well. Like the gravity counterbalances the magnets pretty well to the point of, you can see how easy it is to really close it there. So what you get with those magnets is a little bit more pop when you do a deployment. It just kind of makes the deployment a little more likely to succeed, which is nice because at the end of the day, getting the knife out is really important. Getting the knife back is important too, but it's, you can do that. Just if for some reason it doesn't come out all the way, it's a much worse situation than when it doesn't close all the way. So when it doesn't close all the way, you just close it, right? Or it doesn't come out all the way, you've got kind of a knife hanging halfway out when you're trying to use it, and then you have to go figure out how to get it the rest of the way out. Not as ideal to me because usually I'm holding something with the other hand or whatever. So anyways, I've started to, it's grown on me how this deployment works and feels and stuff. The feel in the hand's fine. It's not my favorite knife, and there's no jimping up here. So like if I could, make a couple changes to this knife as a designer, I would do that. I'd probably give it more of like a drop point style blade. I think that would make it a little nicer. I'm not a huge fan of like a straight back blade. I don't like the looks of it a whole hell of a lot, but in daily use, it didn't end up really mattering to me, and it did its job really nicely. You got M390 blade steel, so even though I've used it a bit here, I don't have a single scratch on the blade. I was checking it out before I started the video, and it shows really no signs of use aside from some fingerprints here and there and stuff. So that's really good. He's got this kind of interesting full-length backspacer on this one, which is a little different aesthetically than the prior knife, the Factor. But I generally like the way this one kind of looks. It's a little more slim. The Factor is a little too big to where, it just felt a little more awkward. This guy's a little narrower this way. So the balance of the width to height, width being the thickness of the knife and the height being in this direction, feels a little more balanced on this one. If anything, it feels like a little thick, whereas the other one felt a little flat and maybe something I'd want to skip across the lake like a silver dollar. The rollout is really nice on this. Rollout is one of those things that I feel like is just not talked about enough on knives, and there are a lot of knives that have terrible rollout. The detent's good enough. You have to give it a pretty big throw to get it out, but the rollout's just really smooth. I think about some of even my favorite knives like the Wee Banter, where you really have to get like a pop to get it out of there. I find that very annoying, honestly, when I'm trying to roll out a knife instead of, you know, flip it out. Sure, I can flip it out, that's fine, but that means I have to do this kind of aggressive flip out every time I want to use it. You can roll this knife out, but it's just not very intuitive. It's part of why I also like the Demco knives so much. Obviously, this one's been getting used lately here, but I think of this as being sort of another approach to this. What's interesting is he is actually coming out with a version of the lock that will leverage a back lock, but it also has a front lock, which is really interesting actually, but I'll be interested to see how that goes. One of the things that I've also noticed about this is just generally, like, the weight is just sort of where I like knives to be, like not too light where it feels kind of puny, not too heavy where it feels inconvenient. It's just sort of got some good balance. So though I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is like one of my top 10 knives of all time, I initially wasn't sure if I was even going to keep it in my initial unboxing, and the more I kept it around and used it, the more I actually started to like it more than the Factor, which is, you know, definitely one of my... Factor competes for my top 10. It might be top 15, but it's probably, you know, close to one of my top 10 knives. This is now actually starting to make me think I like it more than the Factor. There's a few things again here and there, like the Factor blade profile and shape and stuff. I might as well bring out the Factor since I keep talking about it so much, that I really like, that kind of keeps it ahead of this. Maybe it's just the originality, it being sort of the first one. The tang, I do like the closing on this one more than that one. I don't like the opening as much as I like that one. It's just a little ratchety, but man, it's kind of fun in its own way. But I do like this kind of blade shape for EDC a bit more. And then I like the finger choil on this one. Like, you can get up into it a little better. This one's finger choil is really not really there. It's more of a sharpening choil. You can put a finger here, but it doesn't feel... If the blade's halfway across my finger, I pretty much feel like that's a bad place to put my finger. If it looks like I can keep my finger under the blade, then that's a good place to put my finger. Same thing here with like the Demco. I can be on here without actually touching the blade, so that works for me. And then I think of like maybe like a Holt where they don't have that up there and you have to keep your finger back here. I like being able to get up into it a little more, you know, by not having the flipper tab there. So there's also some stuff that I think is even worse than the way that this is, because this one I can get pretty darn far up into it, a little further than the Holt, which has the flipper tab. But I don't quite understand his philosophy of this guy right here. I feel like if there is a way to move the pivot up and give myself a little full choil here, that would make this knife ridiculously good. Like, the ergos are okay for a regular grip, but I'd really love a choke up grip on this. And I think that would take it to the next level. Put some jimping up here, and that would just be phenomenal. But yeah, just generally, it was kind of surprising to me. Again, I was not so sure if that was a keeper for me, and it actually started to really grow on me as something that I liked, and I wasn't really sure. I said I might do a more of a longer term review, so I'm glad to be doing this here and be talking about it. What did that result in for me? It's a knife that I actually want to carry. I actually don't want to carry that knife that much. I like it from a collector perspective, but I've kind of gotten over it. Like, I don't really like carrying this knife. Again, it's kind of this flat medallion, flat and tall. The height on this one, let's see if I can kind of show that in a better way here. The height on this other one, they stick together because of the magnets, is a little better for me on like a carry, from a carry profile perspective. You know, this is smaller than the Wii Banner in terms of height. Well, it's very close, at least. Maybe at this point it's a little taller, but generally it's a little, you know, a little shorter and a little more carryable. So great pocket clip again. I just don't mind throwing this one in the pocket and taking it with me, and you know, it's kind of fun to be able to do that, I have to say. Like, that is a really cool deployment method. And it's not as aggressive as like a big OTF or a, you know, like a super aggressive ProTech. Like, that's not going to offend anyone. Someone might not even notice that you automatically opened your knife there. Like, that is very kind of dad you know, dad-o-matic. An automatic that even a dad could love. So good stuff here. Really like this Winterblade Mirage. Again, there's some things I would change, but really like the thumb hole on there too, by the way. I wasn't so sure about that at first, but I find myself almost never missing it. Just that nice little cutout there. Let me get a little zoom on that. That nice little cut into the blade there gives you a little more purchase. And the position from the, you know, in terms of its distance from the pivot, works really well for me. You have good access to it with this sort of relief that you get here. They have this sort of built-in relief that ends up kind of looking futuristic, but actually is very functional. I would like this to be more smoothed in. I think this looks more futuristic this way, but in an ideal world, I'd actually like to see him start to think ergo first a little more. Granted, I know Brian is pushing the boundaries on what's technically possible here, and ergos are not necessarily his first thing that he does when he's designing a knife, but man, if he can get some of the ergos down a little more, and I'm starting to see some models that look like they might, I think he's really got some magical stuff on his hands. So that's all for now. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.